Welcome back to the Tailwind series and building a WordPress theme with Tailwind CSS and underscores. Today we're going to do some pretty cool things. We're going to build a shortcode for the users to add quotes to their pages and posts. And then we're going to build a Tailwind plugin so that anybody can use these styles as a component in any website that they like. Let's begin. To start off, I've already created a quote bubble that we're going to build into our theme. We're going to build this as a shortcode so anybody can add these into a post or a page very easily, give it some text, give it an author, and it'll display just like this. So first, let's create that shortcode, and then I'll show you how to build this as a plugin for Tailwind so you can share it with anybody you'd like. Alright, let's jump over to code. Let's go into our Inc folder. Let's create a new directory. We'll call it shortcodes. Make a new file, and we'll call this one, let's just call it quote.php. Alright, great. So we need two things in this file. First, a function. We'll call it quote. That's going to take in some attributes. And then we need to register it. So we'll do add shortcode. The tag is what we're going to use to put it into our post. So if we want in our post, let's jump over to Chrome real quick. Say we want to edit this post, we want to put it in here. We can say quote, or maybe quote box, and that will be our shortcode right here. So let's take that. So we say quote box is our tag. And the function that it's going to call back is going to be this function here, quote. Alright, now let's just do a quick test real quick. We'll just say return, and in here we'll say an h1 hello world. Close out our h1, and now we can go and check to see if this works. So we have our quote box here. Let's preview changes. That did not work. That is because we don't have anything calling this file yet. So let's go back into our functions.php file. And down here at the bottom, where we're loading up our customizer, let's just add a new spot here. Shortcodes. Let's require get template directory /inc/shortcodes/quote.php. And now you can see hello world is being printed out inside of our post. Now I want to replace all of these classes in here with just simple things that we can use in our shortcodes. So maybe this outer wrapper will be the quote box, this will be our quote text, and this will be our quote author. So let's build this out real quick. Let's go into PHP Storm. So the first thing we need to do here is we'll say we have a div class of quote box. Close out our div. And then inside there we have our h2 and our paragraph. So our h2 will be our class of quote text, and then our paragraph will be our class quote author. Great. Now the next thing I want to do is be able to specify the text and author within here. So we could say text equals this is my quote, and the author will be Chris Perko. Let's go ahead and update this. As you can see, nothing shows up here. If we inspect, let's just make sure that this is working. We have our quote box, quote text, and quote author. So that's great. We just need to put in the attributes that we passed in from here onto the page. Alright, so let's grab those attributes real quick. We'll say @ equal We're going to call shortcode @, and this is going to take an array and what attributes we have being passed in. So what this array is going to do is map the attributes to a default value. So we want to take in text and author. So the first one is text, and our default value is no quote text given, just so we know, we can tell the user that they missed something. And author, no quote author given. Great. Now this is stored in our @s variable here. So all we have to do here is we can break out of this string, append @text, go back into H2, and in our quote author, we append @author, and go back into the HTML. Let's check it out. No quote given, no author given. Oops, I forgot we were using the preview, so let's hit preview changes. This is my quote, Chris Perko. Great, so our shortcode's working. Now we just need to style it with a brand new plugin for Tailwind. Now plugins are a good way for us to share code to other developers. What we're going to build today isn't really worth sharing, but it's a good example of how to actually build a plugin that's going to add some new components into our style.css file. You can find all the documentation on the Tailwind website under the plugin section. I really suggest reading through it. It's a good read. Alright, so let's open up our Tailwind file. And remember, before we created this plugin section, if you created your Tailwind file after 0.5 was released, this will already have been created for you. Now once we have our plugin built, we can easily just add one line of code here and it'll be added to our style sheet. That's why it's going to be super easy to be able to go out and grab some new plugins from NPM or Bower and just require them right here into your code. Alright, so let's go ahead and create a new directory. I'm going to call it Tailwind plugins. And a new file, and we'll call this quotebox.js. Remember, Tailwind is all in JavaScript. It builds CSS from the JavaScript, so that's why we're building a JavaScript file here. Alright, so we're building a new module. This is an ES6 module, so we'll do module.exports equals function options. What this is saying is this is exporting this whole file for something else to use, and that will be our tailwind.js file. And the options allows us to pass in options from our config, and that could be something like maybe a certain color you want to allow the user to specify in their Tailwind file, so they don't have to go in here and mess with your source code. Now the main thing we want to return in here is a function, and the function is going to have an add components method on it. So what add components does is that's going to be Tailwind's cue to say, hey, here's my JavaScript object, go ahead and make new components out of it. Now we had three classes we put into our shortcode. We have the quote box, quote text, and quote author. So let's go ahead and grab quote box and start with that one. This is JavaScript, so we can just say const quote box equals, and that's a new object. We'll say dot quote box is the class, and what do we want in here? Let's just, for example, let's just say color red, and let's just make sure that this is all working. So let's go into our Tailwind file. Let's require // so from here we'll go into our Tailwind plugins and we'll grab quote box, and this is where we could set our options, but we're not going to pass any options to this plugin. Alright, let's go into our terminal and let's just say gulp style just to run it once real quick. No errors, that's great. So let's go into our compiled style.css and we should be able to find a quote. Alright, so it's not here. Let's see what we're missing. Oh, we forgot to add components. So at the end of our file we need to add components, quote box. Let's go ahead and run our gulp again. Let's go back to our style sheet. There's our quote box, color red. Alright, let's update our gulp file real quick. See here, gulp file.js. We want to watch our Sass files, but we also want to watch our Tailwind plugins star.js. So anytime we make a change to this JavaScript file, it'll also trigger our gulp. So now we can run gulp for gulp watch. Let's just make sure that this works. We'll make a change, and then went ahead and styled that. Alright, so let's get rid of this color red, and let's actually style our box. Let's go back to our code pen. I'm going to grab these real quick and just put them here in a comment. Now, one thing to note about plugins is we cannot use the @apply like we did in SCSS. But we do have access to the config file. What we'll do here is we'll say const config equals require TailwindCSS default config. This guy will give us access to everything in the tailwind.js file. So all of our colors, screen sizes, all of this stuff will be great. So we have a max width of extra small. And then at small sizes, we have a max width of small. We have a margin top. We have margin X and of auto. We have background. We've got all these things that we need to build in here. Let's start with the easy things first. Let's do margin top. And just a note, when you're making, in CSS, this would normally be margin top snake case like this. In JavaScript, we just turn it into a camel case like this, where we have the second word capitalized. Now we have margin top of 8. Let's go into our config file here. We have a margin of 8 here, which is 2 rims. We could just do 2 rims here, but it'd be better to grab it from the config file so that the user has more control over it. So we'll say config.margins. It gives this object here, so margin. And then the last thing we need is 8. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's go to our style sheet to see what happened. As you can see, our margin top is now 2 rims, which is pulled directly from our configuration file here. Alright, so we got rid of margin top. Margin X of auto, so that's going to be margin left auto. That's a string auto. Margin right auto. Alright, so we got that taken care of. Next, let's do background gray light. So we'll say background color, and we'll need config dot. Let's go take a look in our Tailwind file here. Let's go to colors at the top. So it'll be the colors object, and then gray light. We can get rid of that. Alright, so we have border radius and we have shadow. We also have padding. Let's go ahead and knock out the padding. Padding. Let's go back to Tailwind, go to padding. So it's going to be config.padding, and then what value here? We're using 8, and it's called 8 here. Great, knocked out padding. Let's do the shadow. So box shadow, config.shadows large. So shadows large. Border radius, see here, border radius. Here we go, so rounded, and we are doing large, so we're going to do border radius config dot border radius, and we're doing large 0.5 rems. All right. So the last thing we need here was we'll just say max width. Let's give it 400 pixels in a string, of course. Great. Let's go over to our web browser. And you can see that we have our quote looking pretty good here. Still need to style the text and the author, but this is working. Now let's style the text of the quote itself. And grab these classes here. We'll make a new const. This is quote text. It's a new object. So quote text. Let's make sure that's what we were using in our shortcode. Yep, quote text. So we have our quote text. See here, we need italic, text right, text blue darkest, and leading normal. Let's do our text. Let's do text align, text right. Got rid of that. We can do font style italic. Now we need text blue darkest. So color is going to be our config dot color colors and blue darkest. And our leading normal, let's go back to our Tailwind file and find this. Leading is our line height. So we're going to say line height config dot leading, and we need normal. That gets rid of the last two classes. Now we just need to add it to our components. So we can turn this into an array and give it quote text, close the array. Let's go back to our style sheet and make sure everything looks good. Here's our quote box. Here's our quote text with our line height. Whoops, this should be right. So let's go ahead and change this real quick to right. My mistake. Let's go check out our post. Let's refresh the page. And there we go. It's aligned to the right. Now we've got one more thing to style, and that's going to be our author here. So let's grab these few classes here. Go back to PHP Storm, const, and this is quote author. The class is quote author. And let's make sure we add it here, quote author. So we need text center, padding top, and text grade darker. So let's go ahead and do text align, going to be center. We have our padding top, which if we can grab this padding up here. Yep, we're still using 8. So padding top 8, and text gray darker. So color config dot colors gray darker. And that's everything we need for our plugin. So what you could do is you could easily take this, put this on npm, and then anybody else can go into their Tailwind config file, go to the plugin section, and just require that one JavaScript file, and they have everything they need to build the same exact component that you have. Now taking a look at this, I noticed a couple things. One is that the paragraph already has some margin top from our regular styles we've already set up here, and it's also missing the little dash to the left of the author's name. So let's go ahead and tweak this a little bit. Let's go into our plugin, our author needs to have 0 margin, so margin top of 0 needs to be text. And then in our shortcode, let's add in the dash right there. Our margin top is being overridden here, so instead of making it important, I'm just going to adjust this padding top to 1 rem. I think that'll be fine. So let's go back into our quote box, get rid of the margin top, change our padding top to level 4. Let's refresh the page, and that looks great. And now this theme can use these quote boxes and put them anywhere inside of a page or inside of a post. And that, guys, is how easy it is to build a plugin within Tailwind and send your code to anybody you'd like for them to use in their own code bases. Very simple. If you like this video, be sure to give me a big thumbs up. Leave a comment below if you have any questions or anything else you'd like to see in this series. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button.